Hi there. Welcome to the Still Standing podcast. I'm Diane Six, and if you're here, chances are life has changed in a way you didn't plan for. This podcast is for people standing in the middle of a chapter they never would have chosen. The people rebuilding, relearning, reclaiming themselves, the people trying to make sense of what happened without pretending it didn't hurt. Around here, we talk about real life, real stories, the messy middle, the meaning we make from the things we survive, and how even after life splits in ways we never expected, we can still stand. So I want to begin where so much of my own story began, with adoption. My story didn't begin with certainty. It began with a question mark. I was adopted, and even when you are deeply loved, adoption can leave you with quiet questions living under the surface, sometimes about where you came from, who you look like, what pieces of you were inherited, what pieces were formed, and what it means to belong when your story begins with separation before connection. That's a complicated thing to carry, especially when you don't have a language for it. When you're little, you don't understand words like identity or origin story. You just feel them. You notice things and you wonder things. You wonder why certain questions feel bigger for you than others seem to be for other people. You wonder why belonging can feel both true and tender at the same time. You wonder why love can be present and gratitude can be real, and yet some small parts of you still feel like life it's searching for something unnamed. That was part of my beginning. And I think what adoption gave me very early, before I even knew what to call it, was an understanding that life can split before you're even old enough to explain the split. That sometimes your first story is already layered, already complicated, and already asking you to become someone strong. Not because you wanted to be, but because life asked it of you early. And maybe that's what matters so much to me now. Because when my story starts with a question, you spend a lot of time learning how you live without every answer. You learn how to keep going while still wondering. You learn how to build an identity, not just inherit one. You learn how to stand, even when part of you is still reaching backwards, trying to understand where you began. And here's what that taught me. Sometimes the very thing that made you feel uncertain can make you strong. Sometimes what felt like the beginning of confusion was also the beginning of resilience. My adoption story taught me that identity is not always something handed to you in a little neat package. Sometimes it's something you uncover slowly, something you build honestly, and something that you reclaim over time. It taught me that two things can be true at once. You can be loved and still long for answers. You can be grateful and still grieve what you never got to know. You can have a beautiful life and still carry tender places. And none of that makes you broken, makes you human. That matters because so many people spend years judging themselves for having complicated feelings about complicated things. But complicated feelings are not a character flaw. They are often evidence that something meaningful happened to you. And if I've learned anything, it's that healing doesn't usually come from pretending your story was simpler than it was. It comes from telling the truth about it. So what does that mean? It means that if part of your story is unresolved, you're not doing life wrong. If there's part of your life that still feels tender, confusing, unfinished, or hard to name, that doesn't mean you're weak. It does not mean you should be over it, and definitely does not mean you have failed at healing. It may mean that your story deserves your honesty. A lot of us were taught to move on too quickly, to be grateful, be positive, be fine, be strong, and keep it moving. But real strength is not pretending something didn't shape you. Real strength is being willing to look at it and say, that mattered, that changed me, and I'm allowed to understand it now. For some of you, your adoption story would literally be adoption. It might be something else. It might be divorce. It might be grief. It could be an illness, some type of betrayal. It might be a childhood experience that you never fully unpacked because you were too busy surviving it. But the invitation is the same. Stop judging the place in your story that still wants attention. It may not be trying to hold you back. It may be asking to fully be seen. And when you begin to see it clearly, you don't become weaker. You become more whole. So here's the question that I want to leave with you today. What part of your story still deserves your honesty, not your dismissal? Think about that. Not what you've explained away, not what you have been rushed past, not how you minimized so many other people and how they would feel more comfortable. What part of your story still deserves to be acknowledged for the way it shaped you? Sit on that. You don't need to solve it today. You just need to tell yourself the truth. Thank you for being here with me for the first episode of Still Standing, a podcast. If this spoke to you in some way, share it with someone who needs to know it too. And if you're walking through your own life split right now, I want you to remember this. You do not need to have all the answers to begin healing. You do not need to feel fully steady to take that next step. And you do not need to go back to who you were to become strong again. Until next time, life splits and you can still stand. Step into my shoes. The chapter, My Secret Sauce. Nope. It was just my story, filed under basic facts about me, right next to my name and the fact that I cannot tolerate family potlucks. And instead of feeling unwanted, I felt chosen. Not metaphorically, literally. My mom and dad picked me. Hand-selected, paperwork signed, paid the legal fees for a 1970s adoption and everything. This was not an impulse buy.